There's a lot going on in the news right now, specifically pertaining to Airbnbs. Like, what's going on? Is the sky falling? Is it still a lucrative business? Does it need to be ran like a business? Or is this something I can do part-time? And I have the perfect person to answer all those questions. Sometimes life just sucks, and sometimes it freaking rocks. We will discuss all the things from family and real estate to travel and just life in general. So take a seat, or don't, you do you, and welcome to the Lumbadass Podcast. Matt Hunter, thank you so much for joining me again today on the Lumbadass Podcast. Certainly,
excited to be here.
You're going to have to be a regular, my friend.
Yeah, my second time back on your podcast, as well as my second time being back on anyone's podcast. I feel so honored.
I'm the only podcast that you've ever done.
No.
Oh, well, what do you mean
I've
then?
done the Do Good Movement. We did the No Vacancy podcast with Natalie Palmer. That's kind of more a short-term rental podcast that we did. So
oh my gosh, I thought you were like, this is my only time. I'm like, really? I feel like you're so knowledgeable. Why would nobody ask you?
Yeah, I really enjoy this too. It's fun. Like, I enjoy coming down and talking. Like, it's pretty, it's I was excited to get out of bed today and come see you and talk to this microphone and entertain your listeners and Billy too.
I appreciate. Yeah, Billy's always up for some entertainment. I love it. I have to say, we did see each other last night. We went to a charity event.
Yeah.
How did you forget about that? That was literally like 11 hours ago. We had a great charity event last night, Fostering Hope. Through Bithia's. It's a service, and this is not what the podcast is going to be about, okay? But I have to tell you, it's about helping families being reunited with their children, whether they've been incarcerated, they've made some bad choices, and they're getting back on the right foot. It's about helping foster, and it was a lovely event. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you and Lise.
The event was great. I really enjoyed it as well. But we've been super busy, and you invited us, and we're like, yeah, we got that event tonight, and we were driving there. And I'm like, Lisa, what is this event about tonight? She's like, I don't know.
So I walk in and I go to get a cocktail, and Matt's like, Lore, I'm all wet. He's like, so what is this whole thing? And there's all these people around, and I'm like, hold on. And I started laughing. I'm like, oh shit.
What are we doing here?
I forgot to explain it to you. So
I didn't know what we're doing here.
I went and got my cocktail, and I was like, okay, Matt, this is what it is. And it was so cool that you hear so many touching stories and stuff, and great cause.
Yeah, stories were great. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
A pleasure to be at your table.
You guys are our people. So
thank you.
Okay, today what I really want to talk about is Airbnb, because last time you were here, you were telling us all the things. But since then, not only have you come upon a new endeavor yourself that I definitely want you to jump into, I know that there's a lot of whispering about the Airbnb market, where it's going and what it's currently doing. So if you want to first talk about where the Airbnb market is for you guys and where you see it going, because I hear Airbnb is going out, it's not a thing anymore. What is it that you're seeing?
So we are still seeing strong demand for our properties.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I was thinking about that when you even asked me that last night. Because hey, let's talk about this. I said, cool, let's do this tomorrow. And so, I think that we really go above and beyond as a business, right? We run it as a business. We look at our marketing. We look at our guest experience. We look at our design. We look at our pricing strategy, or what you might call revenue management. And so we spend a lot of time running that as a component, right? So just like you do with your business, I mean, one might say, well, it's slow with Airbnb, it's slow in real estate, or it's slow in mortgage. Like, I know plenty of people in mortgage that are slow. I know plenty of people in real estate that are slow. You're exceptionally busy, right? Like, I've asked you, how have you been? Well, I've been working hard. I've been doing this, and that's great, right? So same thing on the Airbnb side. So we work real hard at setting up an experience at our properties. So when people are scrolling across the screen, they see our properties pop up and they want to jump into it. So you get them start clicking, and you start inviting them, and they start thinking, hey, I want to stay there. Like, why would they want to stay there? There's hundreds of other places you could stay at. So it's really about, meeting your guest avatar, right? And make sure your design is on point, your pricing strategy is appropriate. And then at the same time, the stay that they have there is an amazing stay, because then you get the reviews, and the reviews stack up, and it drives the algorithm. Like, there's so much lore into this thing, like I didn't know 3 years ago.
Sure.
And I think that's probably what the whispers are you're hearing, because a lot of people bought in, right, come out of COVID. And after COVID, there was such a demand, or even during COVID, there was such a demand for, hey, I want to go stay in an Airbnb. Why? Because I couldn't travel the country. I couldn't travel the world.
Right.
So I'm stuck going on staycations, an hour or two away or whatever. So Airbnb demand was blowing up.
Right.
And so a ton of people then jumped into it, because rates were low.
Yes.
Pricing was decent.
Yep.
They're like, yeah, just pop it on Airbnb. Now I got a vacation home that somebody else is paying for.
Yeah.
And they thought, hey, that's perfect. Well, then they start struggling now because they might have passed it off to a management company like, whatever, Vacasa or Evolve, and that's fine. They do a really good job.
Sure.
But they don't manage it like it's personally your home.
Well, and I think a lot of people got in this notion, I'm going to buy a property, I'm going to deck it all out, and then I'm going to throw it on Airbnb, and it's going to be super easy.
Yeah.
So I think that it has a lot to do with people not running it like a business, but the fact that you guys learned to have systems in place to make sure that T's were crossed and I's were dotted. Now it just runs second nature to you. So very similar, like you said, in real estate, we have all of our systems in place.
Right.
We're still doing the same things. I'm still, even when the market was hot, and this was something that I really pushed. Even when the market was hot, we still did video and photos professionally for all of our homes. We did not skimp when homes were flying off the shelf because we had a level of customer service that our client expected by working with us.
Right.
So I think that that's imperative that you say that. So you guys are doing good. Everything's moving forward with your Airbnb business then. You're not seeing this lag. So the people who are the people who don't run it like a business.
Yeah, or it's just a vacation home for them. They just pop it on Airbnb or VRBO and like, hey, if I get somebody just to pay 1 or 2 stays a month, it just offsets my cost a little bit. Great, right?
Sure.
But I know there's a lot of others that are struggling too out there where they took on a mortgage, high rates, competitive market. And then they forget about all the expense that goes along with this as a business: repairs, maintenance, utilities.
What do you look at
cleaning
repair
fees.
wise? Because I would have never even thought. I mean, I get things happen and stuff like that, but you were telling me about tell the story about the stripper pole.
Oh, let's entertain Billy with this one. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had to stay at the clubhouse. We've had very good stays. Like we've had minimal issues because people ask me, "Oh my gosh, you must like your properties and how people could damage them." Like really, like.
And the clubhouse, really quick, is in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and it is a gorgeous property.
It's a really cool property, cool vibe.
Yep.
But think about this: like when somebody it starts here with the listing, right? And it starts when they scroll and they see the listing. It's a nice place, right? So they already have when they walk in the door, they already know this is a nice place. And when they see that it's a nice place, they're going to treat it nice. Typically, that's just human nature. Like if it's a piece of crap, people are going to walk in like, hey, the owner doesn't really give a crap, so why would I? So they just have at it and just are careless.
Right.
So we have a very, very, very minimal percentage of issues with the properties. But we had this one group come through, and it was a bit of a rough group, and they really enjoyed themselves. And I ended up having the cops called, not like I didn't call them, like a neighbor or somebody did, because there was a fight. The 2 girls got in a fight. One picked up a chair. Yeah, this is entertaining stuff, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's so great because you wouldn't think about it.
Yeah, this girl picked up a chair, threw it at the other girl. Like, of course, there was probably a lot of alcohol involved, and then the chair missed the girl, so it hit the wall, put a little hole in the wall. And then the cops showed up. My neighbor's calling me like, Matt, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've never really had an issue like this to deal with. So I called the guest and like, hey, yeah, there was an altercation with 2 girls. One was an unwanted guest that we've had to have removed. So they were kind of on it, but then there's alcohol involved. Again, it's just, it was getting a little out of hand. So they get it all squared up, and the party kind of dies down. And then, so they pack up the next morning and they leave. And I was actually heading out there to do some maintenance anyways. And I walked through the property, and there was like a hole, not a hole in the ceiling, but a crack in the ceiling. And then there was a little hole in the wall too. And you could tell they probably put up a stripper pole because like it was that type of crowd. Like it was an entertainment crowd. Like I saw on the cameras. So they and I messaged the guys, hey, listen, I know you guys had a great time. Like I know you run as a business too, right? You run your business as a business, because I could tell what type of business he runs. I said, but we just asked that if something was to happen, you go and repair it,
make us whole.
Yeah, make us whole. So I sent a request to him for extra cleaning and then just some drywall repair. And the drywall repair was minimal. It was like $100.
Okay.
And you walk in now, you wouldn't even tell there was a problem. Like it's all repaired. Like, so again, that's the type of thing you need to be on top of with your business. Because if you let stuff slide, now you get a crack in the ceiling, then a garbage disposal goes out, and this happens. Like people walk in your property, now they're leaving you a negative review, or they're like, yeah, they don't give a crap about their place, so why should I? So they start just treating it crappy too. And it just starts heading downhill from there. So we do try to keep our properties at the highest, cleanest level. So when they walk in, there's always an experience to be had. What they see, what they smell, what they hear, right?
Yep.
It's hit them with those senses. We want to hit them with those senses right away when they walk in. And that creates that start of that experience. So sorry to go off on a little tangent, but yeah, I know it entertained you.
No, I'm like, you have to tell that story. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's another thing. How do you deal when neighbors bitch and complain? Because not everybody is happy to live near an Airbnb. And I know, because I know you personally, I know that you are very open-minded about that. And you want to make sure that not only are you providing the guest with a great experience, but the neighborhood has a good experience with you being the owner. So that when you pick up another property, they're not like, oh hell, Matt Hunter's back. So how do you combat that? How do you keep neighbors happy?
So for sure, starting with just even where you buy. First, you got to find out if this is your plan. You wanted to buy a vacation property, or you wanted to buy a property as an investment to run an Airbnb. First thing you got to find out, what are the the requirements of the city, the state, the county regulations, and then you go from there, right?
And those can change though, right?
They could change. There's some places that only issue so many permits. There's some places that don't do any short-term rental. So you've got to that's your first step. Like if you're looking into doing this at all, you've got to start there. Can I even short-term rent this property? Because I've heard a lot of people get it, they buy it, or even sometimes the agents don't know either, Lauren. Like they're like, oh yeah, just put it on Airbnb, and they're like, yeah, you could do it. Like, and then they find out, well, I can't, and then they're stuck with this property and like, well, now what do I do? Do I mid-term rent it? Do I long-term rent it? Like, ouch, right? So that's painful. But again, it starts there where you figure out the location. And even when you look at the property, look like what are going to be my issues with neighbors? Like how close am I to certain neighbors, backyard, front yard, that type of thing? Because when you get that close, you're going to have a lot of you could have some issues depending on what the houses you're setting up for too. Like if you're setting up this house to be a large entertainment house, noise could be an issue.
Sure.
There's three things. It's usually parking, trash, and noise are the three major issues with neighbors when it comes to Airbnb. So you want to check those off. Like even when you're looking at the property, like, okay, if I'm going to have this property hold 16 people, where's the cars going to park? Okay, cool. There's parking not on the street. I don't want my guests park even on the street. I want them on my property.
Right.
Stay out of the neighbors, like, crosshairs, so you're not upsetting them, right? Stay on the property.
Right.
The next one's going to be noise. So you look and say, what's the proximity to other houses, right? And so you find out, is this going to be a problem? And that's typically probably one of the most challenging is the noise.
Sure.
And then the next one's trash. But you just set up a trash service, make sure they're putting the trash in the trash cans. Trash cans get rolled out on the trash day and they get rolled in, after the service is done. And typically you can find a local person, a cleaning crew that'll do that for you. So, but just make sure you're cleaned up. But when it comes to this whole like neighbor relationship.
Yes.
For example, in Havasu, it's called a good neighbor policy. So when you get your short-term rental permit, you're supposed to notify your neighbors in front of you, behind you, and adjacent to you, and on the sides.
Yep.
So it's as simple as you just draft a letter, introduce yourself. My name's Matt Hunter. I own this property. This property is a vacation home, but at the same time, too, it's going to be listed on Airbnb. If you need anything, here's my contact information number. This is also our 24-hour contact number, because you have to have a local 24-hour person there. So then this is our local 24-hour contact. If there was to be an issue, please notify me and then my 24-hour contact.
Like right away.
Right?
Yep.
So you've made, that's your only really requirement to do.
Okay.
And you let them know. Now, they don't have a right. I'm not saying they don't have rights, right? It's like, but they don't have a right to say you can't do that. Like you're well within the guidelines to be able to do this with your home. You own the property, so you can do this. So, but again, that's really important that you find that out prior to finding the house and where you want to be. So you're right. Some neighbors don't like it because some neighbors hear the horror stories.
Right.
And I've even had some of my clients talk about that. Like, oh, I'm having this issue with a neighbor already. I'm like, have you even rented yet? Has there been an issue? No, but they're fired up. I said, well, you need to go talk with them, you know, and you need to talk with them with level head and say, what are your concerns? And say, if those concerns are met or wasn't a problem, would you still have a problem? Like, how do we get over that? So we have had one issue with the neighbor, in Havasu specifically. It's behind us, and it was just
we were actually there.
Yeah, you were at our house,
and we were there with you. Like it's not like we were there partying, and we were just having a glass of wine and
music was on in the backyard.
And you got a phone call, and I'm like,
it's like 6:30 in the afternoon, in the evening, right? Like, oh, you're being too loud, and I already knew it, so. You just got to go through this process. You call the short-term rental hotline, say, yes, it's been resolved. And I'm like, well, I'm here. Like, this is my house. I'm sitting in the backyard with music. You telling me I can't do that? So it's a very, very sensitive neighbor. And then now they're just like trying to be a pain in the butt. So we take those steps, right? And then some of it, you can only do what you can do.
Right.
But it also starts even when the guest gets ready to book. So when they book, there's like a message that comes up like, this house has quiet time. Like there you can put a message to the guest prior to booking. Hey, prior to booking, I just want to make sure that you're aware this house is in a residential community. Here's the requirements from a noise standard we have. 10 p.m. is quiet time. So they know going into it, like that's the expectation.
Perfect.
And then when they receive their welcome instructions, it's pretty well noted in there. It's like the first thing I go at, first thing I stayed in there is like, hey, we're excited. We're just excited as you to have you come stay at this property. However, first I want to address this one major topic. And it's like, Havasu, has required us as hosts to abide by these guidelines. So we lay it all out and we'll say, hey, now that's out of the way. Cool. And then we get to all the good stuff, right?
Nice.
So we really try to just start there. And then I've gone as far as reducing the volume limits or just removing the outside stereo system so that guests don't have access to it. They can bring a small portable Bluetooth speaker.
Sure.
So, but that reminds me, there was one situation where we actually had guests show up.
I love the stories.
Yes,
give it to me.
And my cleaning crew, the barbecue was out of propane or something. So the guests already checked in, and my handyman said, hey, I've got to get some propane. I said, no problem. I'll let the guests know you're bringing back the propane. Just leave it on the side or in the back of the house. He said, cool. So he goes back, leaves the propane, and calls me. He's like, hey, just want to let you know they're setting up DJ equipment on the backyard.
Oh, shit.
And so I messaged him right away. I said, guys, that isn't going to happen. I said, listen, if you want music that loud, put it inside, close the door. And if you want to bang the music all night long inside the house, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Do your thing.
Yeah.
Right. So they moved it inside. So again, it's just communicating. So I think communication is key. There's actually a couple different softwares that are available that we use. One is called Minute, and the other one is Noise Aware. So you can actually put them outside. They look like smoke detectors like in the ceilings. So it'll alert me and my guests like if you reach over a certain decibel level.
Brilliant.
Right? And at a certain time. So you say, okay, up to 10 p.m. you're allowed, say, 70 decibels. And it has to be for 5 minutes or more at that 1 decibel reading. That's technically you would be breaking the law at that point.
So if you got a kid screaming or something, like it's not going to notify you, right? Unless kid's screaming for 5 minutes.
Yeah. So you can set the parameters on it. But technically, like Havasu requires it has to be 70 decibels or more for like 5 minutes or longer. Then technically you're out of line and now you're breaking the law, so to say. So, but at the same time, you're really just trying to communicate with your guest as well as your neighbor. Like you don't want to be a pain in the butt neighbor either.
Yeah.
So, but then some neighbors you'll never make happy. So I've learned that even with
true.
So you do what you have to and you're kind, you know what I mean? And you just also try to put yourself in their position.
I feel like it should be noted too. Excuse me. I feel like it should be noted. If you go stay at a hotel, there are noise limitations and stuff that you have to abide by as well. You can't sit here and scream and yell. In fact, there was one time, you'll love this story. Sweetie Pie and I went to Cancun. And they had
getting pretty wild.
It was really wild.
Oh, wow.
Just the two of us. Anyways, there was a spa on the balcony and they had bubbles out there. So we threw the bubbles in the spa and we had bubbles, Matt, fucking for days, dude. And so we get in the spa and the bubbles overflowed. Well, we were on the top floor and they went out and spilled all down the side of the hotel. It was a freaking disaster. Well, because we were outside, we didn't hear the phone ringing or anything.
It's a phone party.
Right? Yeah. And so in walks the housekeeper and she's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And David's like, what are you doing in my room? She's like, the bubbles are going on the side of the hotel. So what I'm getting at is, and they were having some fire dancers below, is the funniest shit. So what I'm getting at is, even if you go to a hotel, you're still going to have these things. So I don't ever want somebody to be like, oh, well, I can't go to this house and party. No, you can't. You can't go to a hotel and party either, unless it's in a designated area. So if you want to party, rent the space.
Right. But I think it just starts to even when the guest you're looking for is looking for your house.
Sure.
And typically we find guests that are 2-night stays, like a Friday and Saturday. They're coming to they're a little more rowdy, right? So we got to be careful on our minimum. So we typically have a 3-night minimum, and we're really trying to attract, typically families that come in with kids, or families like ourselves. Like people are like, well, what's your guest avatar? I said, we are the guest avatar. We want people like us that come in and they're respectful and they're nice and they enjoy their time, and they might listen to some music, but it isn't cranking, not there to party. And we've had some wildness happen, but not like that, So, but that's what we'd be looking for. Now with the den in the mountains, it sleeps 4. So typically we just get a lot of couples, and it's just a husband and wife or a couple or whatever it is for a romantic little getaway or a small family. So it's really quiet anyway. So that property I have no issues like that with. It's just when you get 16 people, 20 people together, alcohol, things get loud.
It's bound to get loud.
Yeah, it just becomes a little bit more challenging. So, but managing that part of the the experience is important for us as hosts, for the guest, and also for the neighbors.
Agreed. Well, and the cool thing is too, is if I know you have multiple properties, I know what your expectations are. So when I go to stay at other places, if I want to be more rowdy than normal, then I know that I'm not staying at your house for my DJ party outside. I'm going to have to stay somewhere else or bring it inside, like you said.
Yeah.
Question for you. I know that there are rules and guidelines, limitations on cameras. So you did mention that you do have cameras. Where do you have cameras at? Where are you allowed to have them as an Airbnb owner?
Yeah. So we have cameras placed. We have the Ring doorbell, or we actually use Blink. It's an Amazon product, similar product. So we use that. And so we have it at the doorbell. And then we have usually one or like a few on the exterior perimeters, like on the side of the house, and then one towards the back wall. So we're not looking at the backyard space, and obviously not in at the patio or interior at all.
Yep.
But we also note in our listing security cameras, and we note where they're located. So the guest knows when they're booking where they're at. And they're mainly just to keep an eye on the side of the house, who's coming and going. Driveway.
Yep.
So like Havasu, on the driveway, it's on the side of the house, and then one on the back perimeter. So we can just see if people are coming and going from the house. It helps us to keep check on too. If guests have come, they've left, they've checked in, they've checked out. That's the type of thing. And then once they've checked in, it's turned off. So
and security for them too. Oh, it is turned off once they check in.
I usually turn it off.
Okay, yeah,
I usually turn it off because they're there.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, I want to know
already. Come on.
I know. What's our time frame, Billy? We're at 20 minutes. Okay, so
we got a few. We have
a couple minutes.
I know you got to go too. You're a busy girl.
Yeah, I have a coaching call at noon, but that's okay.
You asked though real quick, Eve, let's go back to
Please.
our conversation last night when we first started this thing.
Yes.
It's like, how's your business doing, right?
Yes.
So it's funny you bring this up because last week I was working on some statistics and some data, just looking like, hey, what is average Airbnb? So if you looked at all the homes, all the listings that are on Airbnb, like what is the average occupancy rate for all these properties combined? Because you're going to get your good ones and your low ones, but average occupancy right now is around mid 40%. Let's call it 45. It said 48, but let's just call it 45. So our properties are performing at over 70% occupancy right now.
That is insane.
Right? So, but it takes a lot of work to do that. You know
I did get that right on your story, by the way, because you posted that as a story.
But
I did get wrong the amount of occupancy. I didn't realize it was like 48%, 45%.
That's average, right? That's average. But,
that's insane to me, though. If I have a business that I'm going to run as a business, if I look at it at 45% occupancy, is that a good amount? I get it being average, but is that the good?
Depending on your overhead expense, your cost.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
it could work out.
If you took 365 days a year, 45% or 40%, how many days would it be rented? What's your average rate per night? Like, would that pay the bills? Would that pay your overhead expense? Would that pay your, your debt service and your utility bills and your repairs? And then at the end of the day, are you left with any margin or not? Or is it just to offset expense? Like it's just a different strategy. If you're just looking to offset costs versus to use it as a business to create profit.
Yes.
Right? As income.
Correct. So you have to be in that mind space, because if you're in the mind space of just, I have a home and I'm okay renting it out here and there versus I have this home, I need this rented, I'm going to make different choices for sure.
Right.
So good. And I'm very proud of you, friend. You guys really killed it. So great job, you and Lise.
Yep. Thanks. When we started, we had no idea what we were doing. We really didn't. We just let's do this.
I feel most people don't.
And that's something that you live and you learn. That's how we didn't take a lot of lumps along the way. But you learn along the way.
But I think the reason you didn't have a lot of lumps, to be fair, was because you started small. You didn't buy Vista Lago in the clubhouse and be like, invest hundreds of thousands of dollars. You started small, And so I think that by starting with the cabin and then purchasing the den, the cabin has since been sold, but now then purchasing the den, I think that you were able to work out your kinks with a smaller overhead. So there wasn't as much, what's the word I'm looking for? There wasn't as much there wasn't a lot of overhead, if you will.
Right. There wasn't a lot of stress. There wasn't a lot of issues. It's small. It's easy to manage. You're kind of you're learning as you go. The cost wasn't overly bearing to where you couldn't make a mistake. You're like, hey, if I made a mistake along, it's not gonna kill me.
Yeah, I'm still gonna be able to live in my house and drive my car.
And the one thing is, I'm a huge networker. I know you are too.
Yeah, I love people.
And I think that was one of the advantages I had and found was I just started talking to people, and it was weird. I met this individual at my gym at CrossFit, there was a girl there that said, hey, my friend has a cabin in Running Springs and they're looking for a cleaner. So I was like, well, I got a great cleaning crew.
Yeah.
So we kind of came connected with this individual who's like this STR guru guy. Like he just gets it. Like he opened my mind up. And that's where I started learning, right? And a lot of the knowledge that I have, I've been passing to my clients, right?
Yes.
To educate them. So that's how you to move forward is you've got to continue to educate yourself. And I'm sure like in your business, everything you do, whether it's your networking conferences, like you learn from other people.
Yes.
You know, and
then
huge.
you implement what works for you.
Yeah.
I also think too, learning from other people is key. And I find, at least in my line of work, and you can tell me if you find this as well, we're always here to help other people. You get what you give. So if I'm sitting here giving and telling you what works for me, and then you go and implement it, you're going to go help somebody else, and I'll,
Right.
we get it back eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, so now before I let you go,
Okay.
I want to know, what new endeavor is it that you are working on? Where are we at from the last time that we spoke, and
Okay.
what are you doing?
Yes. Yeah. A lot's happened because last time we spoke, Ms. Lisa and I sat on the other side of the table,
Yes.
and we were super excited for something that was big that was going to happen. And you know what?
Yes.
And it didn't happen. Like
Yep.
it was hard for us to accept that. So quick story is we had sold 3 properties. We were 1031ing them into a new property, a large venue. Values came in way off on the property, on the residential side, on the real estate side. And we just couldn't bridge the gap. So we had to walk away from that deal. And then so we found a couple other deals to basically land this 1031 money in. And we ended up going back to Havasu for another property. So we're actually supposed to close on that this coming week. It's a large property we're excited about. We have a cool vision for it already. But originally, like when we started this thing, this wasn't our plan.
Right.
And that happened. Like, so this happens in life in generally where, things don't go as planned.
Right.
And we had to pivot. We were disappointed, but I think we were protected at the same time.
I agree with you.
From getting involved in something that we knew very little about. We knew we could do this, but it was a huge undertaking with cost and just expense and just time. And
Tell everybody how big the property was, though. I think that's huge.
yeah, it wasn't that big, but it's pretty big. Like for up there, Paso, it was 5.5 acres, which you're managing 5.5 acres. It had 2 homes plus a large pond, a barn, and this whole business component on running weddings.
Yes.
Events and
That's
stuff like
huge,
that.
Matt. I think
And so-
5 acres, that takes a lot of manpower. That takes a lot of mowing. And,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of cost to have that. I know a lot of people talk about having their farm and stuff. That's not something I am
We were excited
at all,
about it.
but
Like, and the numbers on it potentially
sense?
made a ton of sense. Like, and that's what really pulled us down and like kept getting us going. Like we kept looking at this. Even when we walked away, I went back to us, at least we've got to just try to make this work. And like her and I went round and round and round, and she's sometimes more the voice of reason. And I'm like, we could do this, but I'm like, it's going to hurt for a while.
Yeah.
It might be tough for a year or so, but then once we get beyond that hump, it could be good. But then the other thing too is, it could wipe us out too. So we were cautious on that. So we went back to a very familiar place where we have systems. We know the market. We have the guest avatar. Like we've got a strategy. So we think we're going to be very successful with Havasu too as well, and with another big property with some cool features that we're going to do. So
I'm glad you did that.
That's that. Now, the other thing I'm super excited about is, Lauren, like when we started sharing more about our Airbnb story, like I was getting calls multiple times a week. Hey, I want to pick your brain. I want to have coffee with you. I want to, and I'm like, I was kind of flattered at first. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. And then it came to a point where it's like, well, you know what? This is value. I'm going to provide you value. Like if you're seriously looking to get into this, here's the cost. And so I started opening up consulting services. So I have a few clients I'm working with now. We had our master class that we prepared, that we sold. I know quite a few, friends of ours actually went through it, and they found a lot of value in it as well. We're actually looking to reshoot that. We're gonna revise that first part of the year, and present that and be able to sell that a little bit more easily to where people can click and buy.
Sure.
So, but for individuals that were looking to get just into, whether it's short-term rental real estate or even mid-term or long-term, just to hear our story and our tips and tricks, right? But there's a lot to be learned on the short-term rental side. Now, short-term rental, it's not as passive, right? It's not simply like your house in Ocean Springs or some of our long-terms we hadn't have. So it's like set it and forget it.
Sure.
Right? But the money is, the income on it is 10x. It's huge, but it's also a lot of work.
It's,
like you have the
and
capacity.
Risk. And there's risk.
And if you have the capacity to do it, it makes sense. But if you're looking for like just to plant some money, let it, get the equity, somebody else pay the mortgage. Hey, long-term works all day long too, especially right now. People need long-term long-term housing.
I do. I love our long-term
Yeah.
our long-term housing.
Yeah.
But I will say something you said, you love going out for coffee and can I pick your brain and stuff like that? Listen, I'm with you. I will talk to anybody about real estate, anybody that wants to buy real estate, anybody that wants to get into the real estate business. I'm all for it. The problem is if I'm taking time 5-6 days a week to meet with different people who want to be in real estate, that takes away from my business. I'm not calling clients. I'm not following up with them. There are certain things that need to be done. So if I'm not doing that during that time, then my day is now longer because I have to do it somewhere else.
Right.
So to me, I think the consulting thing is perfect for you. It's right up your alley. People have direct access to you. If somebody was interested in this, how do they get a hold of you?
So they connect with me on Instagram at Matt Hunter 27.
Okay.
Or at meetthehunters.net. So you can connect with us both there.
Perfect. And just send you an email or a message. Perfect.
Yeah.
You're awesome, Matt. Thank you so much again for your time. I appreciate you letting me pick your brain.
Oh. Thanks for letting me come on again. This is great.
Good deal.
All right.